When my mom died, I thought I'd finally be free of her cruelty, until I found the letter she left me. When people talk about losing their mother, they use words like grief, ache, and emptiness. When mine died, all I felt was quiet. No sobbing, no anger, no relief either, just an eerie, still kind of silence inside me. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and suddenly remembered how to exhale. I was 33 when the call came. A nurse from a hospital in upstate New York told me that my mother, Margaret Harlow, had suffered a heart attack and passed away in her sleep. The nurse's voice was calm and practiced. I could tell she'd made this call hundreds of times. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there in my office, staring at the muted blue light of my computer screen. It was a Thursday. I still had emails to send, invoices to approve. I didn't cry instead. I opened a new spreadsheet. Old habits die hard. It wasn't until an hour later, when my coworker Danielle walked in and saw my face, that I said the words out loud. My mom's dead. She froze. Oh my God, Claire, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I nodded too fast. Too eager to look fine. I'm okay. It's complicated because it always was. The thing about being raised by someone like my mother is that you learn to read silence the way other kids read bedtime stories. Every quiet moment could explode. Every smile could turn sharp. Growing up, I was never sure which version of her I'd get. The charming church volunteer who baked pies for neighbors, or the cold-eyed woman who'd pour the same pie into the trash if I forgot to thank her the right way. My dad had died when I was 8. Car accident. After that, it was just her and me, or rather, her, and whoever she decided I was supposed to be that day. When I got straight A's, she'd say, "Don't get cocky." When I got a B, she'd say, "You could have done better." When I won a scholarship, she told me, "You think this makes you special? You're still nobody." I stopped trying to impress her around 15. I moved out the day I turned 18, packed everything I owned into a duffel bag, got on a bus and didn't look back. She didn't call, didn't write. I sent her postcards from college, trying to bridge that impossible gap, but she never responded. Until one day, she did. I still remember that envelope. My name written in her perfect cursive. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Stop embarrassing yourself. You don't need me." I laughed when I read it. Then I cried harder than I had since Dad's funeral. So when the hospital called 15 years later, saying she was gone, I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. There was no next of kin, just me, no family to call, no cousins, no siblings. The nurse said they'd found a will, a small house upstate, paid off, and something else. "There's a letter for you," she added gently. She left instructions that it be given to you personally. My heart sank. Of course she did. I flew out that weekend. The town was small, barely a dot on the map. Pine Hollow, population maybe 2,000. The kind of place where people still waved at passing cars and everyone knew who owned the local diner. Her house sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by tall pines. The shutters were faded, the porch sagging, but it was neat, too neat. The lawn trimmed, the mailbox polished, the front door freshly painted white. It looked like she'd been expecting me. Inside, everything was exactly how I remembered. The lace curtains, the smell of lavender and lemon polish, the framed picture of my father on the mantel, his smile forever gentle and kind. I half expected her to appear from the kitchen, hands on hips, demanding to know why I hadn't called before showing up. But the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. The lawyer had told me the letter would be on her desk. Sure enough, in her office, the same room she'd always kept locked from me as a kid, was a sealed envelope with my name written across it in that familiar, perfect cursive. Claire. No, dear, no love, just my name. For a long moment, I couldn't touch it, because deep down, I knew whatever was inside would hurt. It always did. I sat in her old chair. It still smelled faintly of her perfume, that expensive floral scent she never let me borrow. I stared at the envelope until my vision blurred. Then I tore it open. Inside was a folded sheet of stationery, and a small brass key taped to the bottom corner. The letter was handwritten. No date. Claire, if you're reading this, then I've already passed. I imagine you're angry. That's fine. You always were. I know I wasn't the mother you wanted, but you weren't the daughter I expected either. You were too much like him, your father, always chasing dreams instead of facing reality. There are things you don't know, things I've kept from you because I didn't think you could handle them. But now you deserve to know. The key belongs to the chest in the attic. Everything you need to understand is inside. You might hate me more after reading what's there, or maybe you'll finally understand why I did what I did. Either way, it's time you figured it out. Mom. My hands trembled by the time I reached the end. There it was again, that phrase, "You'll figure it out." The same thing she'd said to me every time she refused to explain something, every time she left me in confusion as a kid. I laughed bitterly. Of course, I looked at the key. It was small, ornate, old-fashioned, The kind that belonged to a jewelry box or diary, not a chest. The attic door creaked when I pulled the cord. Dust rained down. The stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed up. The air was thick with dust and something else, faintly sweet, like old cedar and perfume. Light spilled through a single round window, illuminating boxes stacked neatly along the walls, and there in the center sat the chest, wooden, dark, polished to a shine. It looked ancient. My heart pounded as I knelt beside it. The key fit perfectly. When I turned it, the lock clicked with a sound that felt final. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside were dozens of envelopes, each one with my name written across it, some yellowed with age, some newer, each sealed. I picked one up at random. It was dated August 15th, 1996, the day after my 10th birthday. My breath caught. I tore it open. "You looked so happy yesterday. Like you didn't need me." I hate that. "I hate that you look like him when you smile." I froze, then opened another. "You don't listen. You never listen. I don't know why I bother trying to love you." Another. "You're wasting your life. You'll see I was right someday." Each letter worse than the last. Pages of venom, resentment, jealousy, obsession. Some ranted about my father, about how he'd ruined her life. Others detailed things I didn't even remember. Small mistakes turned into reasons for her to despise me. By the 10th letter, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to stop. But one envelope, newer than the rest, sat at the very bottom. It was dated just 2 weeks before she died. I opened it with shaking hands. "Claire, the doctors say I don't have much time. I keep thinking about you, about how you never needed me. You prove that. You became everything without my help, but you need to know something. I wasn't cruel for no reason. There are things you never understood about him, about your father. Check the safe behind his photo. The code is your birthday. Then you'll know the truth. I did what I had to do." My pulse thundered in my ears. I looked at the photo on the mantel, my father's kind, smiling face, a safe behind it. I ran downstairs, heart in my throat, lifted the picture frame from the wall. Sure enough, there was a small hidden panel behind it, a safe. I entered my birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside was a single manila folder, and when I opened it, everything I thought I knew about my father shattered in an instant. Inside the manila folder was a single newspaper clipping, brittle and yellowed with age. The headline stopped me cold. "Local man questioned in missing girl case. Released without charges." I stared at the photo beneath it. It was him, my father, smiling, standing beside a police cruiser. The date was March 18th, 1998, the year before he died. I blinked, reading the caption twice to be sure. "Thomas Harlow, a Pine Hollow resident, was questioned in connection with the disappearance of 14-year-old Anna Mitchell. Police confirmed he was released after providing an alibi. No charges were filed." I sat back hard, my pulse roaring in my ears. My father? Questioned in a missing girls case? That couldn't be right. He'd been gentle, kind. The kind of man who left notes in my lunchbox and tucked me in every night. He wasn't capable of that. I flipped through the folder, searching for context. There were 3 more clippings, all about the same girl. Anna Mitchell, 14, vanished walking home from school one afternoon. Her backpack was found in a drainage ditch 2 miles away. Her body was never recovered. The last article was dated just 2 months before my father's car accident. The case had gone cold, and scrawled in my mother's handwriting across the top of the last page were 5 words. "He never stopped seeing her." My breath caught. What the hell? I rifled through the rest of the folder. There were photos, letters, even a short note written by my mother. I told him to stop. He said I was overreacting. He said she reminded him of you. That's when I knew he was lying. My stomach twisted. I read it again and again, but the words didn't change. Reminded him of me. I slammed the folder shut and stumbled backward. The sound echoed through the empty house. I wanted to believe it was just another manipulation, that even in death, she'd found a way to twist the knife one last time. But deep down, I wasn't sure because my father's death had always felt off. He'd been driving alone that night. No witnesses. My mother told everyone it was an accident. Icy roads, faulty brakes, but she'd never cried. Not once. I used to tell myself she was too angry to grieve. Now I wasn't so sure. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I kept seeing that headline, that photograph of my father smiling beside a police cruiser, and my mother's voice echoing in my head. "You'll figure it out." It wasn't a dare anymore. It was a curse. That night, I slept in her bed. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to feel close to something real, but sleep didn't come easy. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every whisper of wind through the pines outside made me flinch. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a faint sound, paper rustling. I sat up. The bedroom door was open. I hadn't left it that way. The sound was coming from the hall. Slowly, I got up and stepped into the dark. The light from the living room cast long shadows across the floor. And there, in the center of the room, The folder I'd left on the desk was open, pages scattered. A single sheet sat on top, one I didn't remember reading before. It was a police report. Incident report, Suburb 2274, interview. Summary: Margaret Harlow, spouse of Thomas Harlow. Mrs. Harlow stated that her husband had grown distant and secretive. When asked if she believed he was involved in Anna Mitchell's disappearance, she said he knew her. I found a photo in his wallet. When asked to provide said photo, Mrs. Harlow claimed she burned it. No evidence recovered. Statement inconclusive. My mother had reported him. I sank to my knees. Jesus, Mom. It didn't make sense. If she believed he'd hurt someone, why didn't she leave him? Why stay? Why protect him unless she hadn't? The next morning, I drove into town. Pine Hollow hadn't changed much since I was a kid. One main street, a coffee shop, a gas station, a small library that looked more like someone's house. The librarian was an older woman named Edith. She recognized my mother's name instantly. Margaret Harlow's daughter? She asked, peering over her glasses. She was in here all the time, always checking out true crime books. My throat went dry. Did she ever talk about my dad? Edith hesitated. Only once. Said he wasn't the man everyone thought he was. I swallowed hard. Did she ever mention Anna Mitchell? Her face softened. Oh, honey. That poor girl. That was such a terrible thing. Her mama never recovered. Used to come in here every week, hoping for news. When your daddy passed, some folks thought maybe it wasn't an accident. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? She lowered her voice. They said your mom was with him that night. I blinked. That's not possible. She told me he died on his way home from work. Edith frowned. Then she didn't tell you the whole story. I spent the next 2 hours in the library archives. Most of the files were scanned newspaper records. Grainy and faded. But there it was again. March 1999. Local man dies in single vehicle crash. Wife hospitalized. Hospitalized. I read the article twice. Apparently, my mother had been in the car. Minor injuries. Released after 2 days. But what caught my eye was a single sentence buried in the middle. Authorities declined to comment on whether the deceased was under investigation at the time of the crash. The room seemed to tilt. He'd been under investigation. Again. For what? I gathered every file, every note, every scrap of information, and drove straight back to the house. The whole way there, one thought pulsed in my brain. She'd known. She'd known, and she'd stayed. Maybe to protect me. Maybe for something darker. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. The timeline didn't make sense. 1998. Anna Mitchell. Disappears. 9. My father dies in a car. Crash 99. My mother survives. 2008. She sends me that letter telling me to stop embarrassing myself. 2023. She dies. Leaves me a note saying I need to understand. I didn't know what I was supposed to understand anymore. My stomach turned as I thought of that chest in the attic. Maybe there was more. So I went back up. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Beneath, the letters was a false bottom. A thin layer of wood, with tiny metal notches at each corner. I pried it up, carefully. Below was a small black notebook, leather-bound. Heavy. It smelled faintly of smoke and perfume. Opened it. The first few pages were blank. Then, in my mother's handwriting, dated February 1999, he promised it would stop, but I know he's still lying. I saw her bracelet in the glove compartment. He said it belonged to one of your friends. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. The next entry, March 5th. He's going to meet her again. Says he needs to explain things. I'm going to follow him this time. If he won't tell the truth, I'll make him. March 6th. I saw the way he looked at her. The same way he used to look at me. I waited until she left. He didn't see me. I wanted to hurt him. I didn't. Not yet. And the final entry, March 10th, the day before the crash. He says we need to drive somewhere tonight. Somewhere quiet. He says he wants to talk. I don't know if I should go. But if I don't, I'll never know what he's hiding. If we don't come back, tell Claire I did what I had to do. I stared at the page until the words blurred. Then I flipped to the very last one. There. Written in darker ink, as if added years later. He wasn't the only one with secrets. A chill ran down my spine. Because the handwriting on that line wasn't hers. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that final line from the journal again. He wasn't the only one with secrets. Written in handwriting that wasn't my mother's. I'd memorized her script years ago. The clean, perfect cursive that looked like something out of an etiquette manual. This was different. Rushed. Angular. Almost masculine. And somehow, horribly familiar. I stared at the letters until sunrise, comparing them to the notes in the folder, to the old report cards she'd kept in a box under the bed, to her grocery lists and receipts. No match. But when I compared it to the signature on my father's driver's license, tucked inside the safe behind the photo, it was nearly identical. It was his. My stomach twisted. He'd written in her notebook, but when? Before he died after? That last thought hit me so hard I actually laughed. A short, humorless bark that sounded half mad in the empty house. Get a grip, Claire, I muttered to myself. You're starting to sound like her. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in that house. The next morning, I called the Pine Hollow Police Department. A woman answered, cheerful and efficient. Pine Hollow PD, Officer Franklin speaking. I cleared my throat. Hi, my name's Claire Harlow. My mother, Margaret Harlow, recently passed away. I'm going through some of her things, and I came across old documents about a missing person case. Anna Mitchell? There was a pause. Ah, she said finally. That's a name I haven't heard in a while. You said you're Margaret's daughter? Yes. She came by the station a few times over the years. Always asked about the case. Said she thought her husband knew something. Did anyone ever follow up? I asked, another pause. It was a long time ago, Miss Harlow. That case went cold before I even joined the force. But your mother, she was persistent. Always said she had proof she couldn't show us yet. In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. Proof of what? That your father wasn't the man everyone thought he was. My hand tightened around the phone. Do you know what happened to Anna? To her family? She never came home, Franklin said softly. Her mother died in 2005. Her father moved away soon after. No one left to ask. There was a long silence. Listen, the officer added gently. If you found anything new, photos, letters, anything, you can bring it by. We can reopen the file. I almost said yes. Almost. But something in my gut twisted. Because whatever this was, it felt bigger than a police file. It felt personal. I'll think about it, I said instead. I hung up before she could ask more questions. For the next few days, I tried to distract myself. Cleaning, sorting, donating things I didn't want. But no matter what I did, the folder and the notebook sat in the corner of my mind like open wounds. And the house itself, that neat, orderly little home, began to feel wrong, like the walls were holding their breath. The first time it happened, I was in the kitchen washing dishes. The window was open. Wind stirred the curtains. Then I heard footsteps upstairs, slow, measured. I froze, soap dripping from my hands. Hello? No answer. I grabbed the nearest thing, a broom, and crept toward the stairs. The sound stopped. I took another step. The stairs creaked under my weight. Then something thudded from inside the attic. A single heavy sound, like a box dropping. My pulse spiked. Raccoons? I whispered to myself. Just raccoons. But I didn't believe it. That night, I went through the chest again. I was searching for anything, any clue that could explain what I'd found. Near the bottom, taped to the inside wall, was a small envelope I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a photo, black and white. My father, standing in front of the Pine Hollow diner, arm around a teenage girl with dark hair. She looked familiar. Somehow, on the back, written in pencil, Anna, summer, 98. My blood went cold. I stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then I noticed something else. Behind them, blurred in the background of the photo, was my mother, watching them from across the street. Her face was turned toward the camera, half-shadowed but unmistakable, and she was smiling. The next morning, I drove into town again. The diner was still there. Same sign, same red vinyl booths. When I walked in, the woman behind the counter looked up and froze mid-smile. Claire? I blinked. She was older, grayer, but her eyes, deep hazel, sharp, looked exactly the same as the girl in the photo. Anna? I whispered, her lips parted. Oh, honey. You look just like him. For a second, I couldn't breathe. You're alive, I said. She nodded slowly. Yeah, barely. Then she set down the coffee pot, motioned for me to sit. When I did, she folded her hands on the counter. I figured one of you would show up eventually, she said quietly. Didn't think it'd be you. She told me everything. About how she'd met my father when she was 14. He'd been helping her mom fix up their car, had offered her a ride home one day. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who made you feel seen. At first, she thought of him as a friend, a father figure. Then things got complicated. He started showing up at my school, she said. Said he wanted to help me with my science project. Told me I was smart. That I reminded him of someone. I swallowed hard. Me, she nodded. Yeah, I think so. Her eyes glistened. Your mom found out. She came to my house one night. Told my mother everything. She wasn't mad at me. She was furious at him. So why did you disappear? Her jaw tightened. Because she told me to. What? She said if I didn't leave town, she'd make sure everyone knew. That I'd never get to live a normal life. So I left. Stayed with an aunt in another state. Changed my name. Tried to forget. She looked down. I didn't know he died. Not until years later. I stared at her. You didn't go to the police? I was a scared kid, Claire. Your mom scared me worse than he ever did. I sat back, stunned. All those years of thinking my mother was the monster. And now I wasn't sure who she'd been protecting. Me? Herself? The world? I'm sorry, Anna said quietly. I shouldn't have told you all this. But you deserve to know, I shook my head. No, I needed to hear it. Your mom wasn't crazy, you know, she added softly. She just loved him too much. Even after everything. I didn't answer. Because love wasn't the word I'd use for what my mother had felt. Obsession, maybe. Control, definitely. But love? No. When I left the diner, the sky had turned gray. Clouds rolling low over the pines. I drove back to the house on autopilot. Replaying her words in my head, she told me to leave town. He scared me worse than he ever did. She loved him too much. None of it made sense until I parked in front of the house and saw the door was open, just a crack. I hadn't left it that way. My chest tightened. I stepped inside, every instinct screaming at me to run. The air felt colder than it had that morning. Heavier? The folder was on the table again. Open, and on top of it was another piece of paper, newer, not yellowed, not dusty, fresh ink, written in the same handwriting I'd seen in the notebook, my father's. She wasn't the only one who lied. Mouth went dry. I turned the paper over. The back was a single address. It was in Pine Hollow, an address that didn't exist on any map I remembered. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. I should have left right then. But curiosity, that old, dangerous part of me that always wanted answers, won again. I grabbed my keys and drove straight toward the address written in my dead father's handwriting, the road to the address on that. Paper cut through a part of Pine Hollow I barely remembered. The pines grew denser the farther I went, branches heavy with rain, needles whispering against the windshield like a warning. The GPS lost signal halfway there, leaving me with nothing but my headlights and my gut. The rain came harder. My wipers squealed across the glass when I finally saw the turnoff, a narrow dirt road with a rusted mailbox and no number. I almost kept driving, but the address matched. I turned in. The tires crunched over gravel and mud. At the end of the road sat a cabin, small, one-story, wood siding darkened by decades of storms. The porch light flickered. For a wild second, I thought someone had left it on for me. I parked, left the car running, and stepped out into the rain. The air smelled like pine and rust. Every instinct screamed, no. But I climbed the steps anyway. The front door wasn't locked. It groaned open. Under my hand, the smell hit me first. Old wood, damp earth, something metallic and faintly sour. Inside, dust hung thick in the air. The living room was small, cluttered with old furniture draped in white sheets. A fireplace sat cold and blackened with soot. On the wall hung a single photo frame. It was turned backward. Flipped it over. It was a picture of my parents, smiling, younger, taken before I was born, and behind them, blurred in the distance, was the same diner where I'd met Anna. The back of the photo was signed, "Our place." My pulse pounded in my ears. Why would he bring me here? Or had my mother? I moved deeper into the cabin. The bedroom door stood half open. Something about it felt wrong, like the air on the other side was thicker. I pushed it open. Inside was a bed covered in a faded quilt, a wooden dresser, and another desk in the corner. On the desk sat an old tape recorder. Next to it, a cassette labeled, "For Claire." I stared at it for a long moment before pressing play. The tape hissed, crackled, and then my father's voice, soft, calm, familiar. "If you're hearing this, then I guess Margaret's gone. And maybe I am too," I froze. "I know what she's told you. About the girl, about me, about what happened that night. None of it's the full story. None of it ever was." The rain hammered the roof, drowning the silence between his words. "Your mother loved me." She did, but she also needed control. When she found out about Anna, she made it sound worse than it was. I tried to help that girl. Her family was falling apart. I was just trying to do what your mother wouldn't. Show compassion. His voice broke a little. Margaret didn't understand boundaries. She didn't understand trust. When she followed me that night, I thought we could fix it. But she swerved. She grabbed the wheel. She killed us both. My chest constricted. "No," I whispered. "That's not true. She survived." "Of course she did. She always does." And when she woke up, she told everyone I was driving. Said I lost control. Said I was the monster. Because that's easier to live with. He paused. "If she left you this letter, Claire, then she still wanted to control the story. Don't let her. Don't let her twist you the way she twisted me." The tape clicked softly. Then silence. I stood there shaking. Rainwater dripping from my hair. My heart pounding so hard it hurt. For years, I'd built my life on two truths. That my father was good, and my mother was cruel. Now both of them were liars. When I stepped outside, the storm had slowed to a drizzle. Fog pooled low around the trees. That's when I saw the second Car, an old blue sedan parked halfway down the drive. Someone was sitting inside. The window rolled down slowly, and I saw her face, Anna. She looked at me through the rain, her expression unreadable. I walked toward her cautiously. She didn't get out. "Why are you here?" I demanded. She hesitated, then reached into her jacket and pulled something out. A folded envelope. "I got this in the mail 3 days ago." She said. I took it. My name was written across the front, in my mother's handwriting. I tore it open. "Claire, if you found this, then you've been to the cabin." "Good. You deserve to hear his story, but you also deserve the truth. He wasn't trying to help that girl. He was obsessed. When I followed him that night, he wasn't taking her home. He was taking her here. She never made it inside. I made sure of that." My vision blurred. Anna looked down, voice shaking. "I didn't know. Not until today. There was more to the letter. The crash wasn't an accident. He begged me to keep his secret, said it would destroy you. But I couldn't let you grow up loving a man like that. So I took you, and I left him in the car. You were asleep in the back seat. You don't remember. I dragged you home before anyone found us. I told them it was him. I told them what I needed to protect you, and I'd do it again." The paper shook in my hands. "I was in the car," I whispered. Anna's eyes widened. "You were—" "I was in the car. She lied about everything." There was one last line at the bottom of the letter. He wasn't the monster. I felt sick. The rain started up again, cold and relentless. Anna stepped out of her car, holding something else, a small wooden box. "She sent this too," she said. "To me. Said it was for you when you were ready." I opened it. Inside was a tiny silver bracelet, the kind a child would wear. My name engraved on it, but it wasn't mine. It was hers. Anna. I looked up at her, horrified. "She said it was lost," Anna whispered. "That night. She told me he kept it. But if your mom had it all along, she took it," I said. "She took it to make him look guilty." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "She wanted to ruin him." "No," I said quietly. "She wanted to protect me, even if it meant destroying both of you." We stood there for a long time, the rain washing everything clean around us, the truth hanging between us like fog. Then Anna said softly, "What are you going to do with all this?" I didn't know. The world felt like it was tilting beneath me, the ground muddy and soft and unreliable. Finally, I said, "I think I need to bury the past." Literally. Anna frowned. "What do you mean?" I held up the bracelet, the photo, the letters, all of it. "It ends here." We dug in silence behind the cabin. The soil was wet and heavy, our shovels slicing through years of secrets. When the hole was deep enough, I placed the box inside. The bracelet, the tape, the letter, the photo. Everything that had defined my family, lies, obsession, cruelty, went into that grave. I covered it back up. The rain stopped. For the first time since I'd arrived in Pine Hollow, the air felt still, peaceful. Anna put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think so." We walked back to our cars in silence. She started her engine. I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the cabin in the rearview mirror until it disappeared into the trees. As I drove away, the clouds broke and sunlight poured through, but somewhere deep inside, I still felt the weight of that final sentence echoing in my mind. He wasn't the monster. I was, and for the first time, I wasn't sure which one of them I believed anymore. I drove through Pine Hollow until the trees thinned, and the first orange glow of sunset streaked the horizon. The world looked washed clean after the rain, but inside me, everything felt muddier than ever. Nothing about my parents made sense anymore. The truth wasn't clear. It was fractured. Every letter, every photo, every confession only added another layer of distortion. My father claimed innocence, my mother claimed protection, and both had written themselves into the role of victim. By the time I reached town, my phone had no signal. I didn't care. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I needed quiet. I needed to think. I stopped at a cheap roadside motel with flickering neon lights, the kind of place where the sheets always smell faintly of cigarettes no matter how many times they're washed. When the clerk handed me the key, he gave me a look that made me wonder what kind of people usually came here, but I didn't care. Inside, the air conditioner rattled softly. I sat on the bed, staring at the carpet until my vision blurred. On the nightstand sat my mother's letter. I couldn't seem to stop reading it. He wasn't the monster. I was. I must have read that line 100 times before I finally fell asleep. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of knocking. 3 slow knocks, even, deliberate. At first, I thought it was the room next door, but then came another 3, and this time it was definitely my door. My pulse jumped. "Who is it?" No answer. I waited, frozen, counting the seconds. Then, another 3 knocks. I crept closer, heart hammering. The peephole showed nothing but darkness. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty, except for one thing. A single white envelope lying on the floor. No address. No postage. Just my name. Claire. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was my mother's. I looked down the hall again, but it was empty. The air smelled faintly of rain and old cigarettes. Hands shaking, I picked up the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed the cabin, taken recently. The grass looked freshly trampled. The sky still gray from the storm. In the window, a faint reflection, a silhouette. Me. The photo had been taken today, scrawled in ink across the bottom. "You're not done yet." I don't remember leaving the motel. 1 minute I was sitting there with the photo, and the next I was back in my car. Headlights slicing through the misty dark. The cabin road looked different at night. Narrower, wilder. Every shadow seemed alive. By the time I pulled up, the fog had rolled in thick enough to hide the trees. I killed the engine. Silence. Then, faint music. A woman's voice humming, coming from inside the cabin. It sounded like her. I stepped out, heart pounding. The front door creaked open easily, like it had been waiting for me. The air inside was warm, too warm, and the humming stopped. "Mom?" I whispered. Nothing. The living room looked exactly as I'd left it, dusty, cluttered, but undisturbed. Then I saw it, on the desk, the tape recorder, still there. But now, there was a second cassette beside it, unlabeled. I pressed play. For a long time, there was just static, then my mother's voice. "I knew you'd come back. You always do. You always need answers." My hands went cold. "You think you know the truth now, don't you? But you only know the pieces I let you find." Static again. Then, "I told you I followed him that night. I told you I stopped him. But I never told you what happened after." A long pause. "You were asleep in the back seat. I saw her bracelet on the dashboard. I lost control. I hit the tree. He wasn't dead. Not yet. But I couldn't let him live. Not after what he did to her. Not after what he did to me." I staggered back, my knees hitting the edge of the bed. "She killed him. I told the police he was driving. They believed me. Everyone did. And I swore I'd never tell you. But I see now I can't protect you forever. You're too much like him." Her voice cracked on the last words. "I tried to love you. God help me, I did. But every time you smiled, I saw him. Every time you spoke, I heard him. And every time you looked at me, I felt that night again." The tape clicked off. I sat there in silence, numb, until I realized there was a faint sound coming from the attic above me. A creak, then another. Slow, deliberate. Someone was walking up there. I grabbed my phone, but there was no service. The stairs to the attic loomed like a dark throat at the end of the hall. The air smelled like rain and cedar. I climbed, one step at a time, my flashlight beam cutting through the dust. When I reached the top, I froze. The chest was open, empty. The floorboards around it had been disturbed, muddy footprints leading away toward the far corner, where the wall looked wrong, like it had been patched over recently. The boards there were newer, lighter in color. I knelt, ran my hand over the seam, hollow. I pulled at the edge until the wood gave way with a splintering crack. Behind it, a space no bigger than a crawl hole. And inside, bones, wrapped in a moldy blanket, small child-sized. My breath caught. There was a locket around the neck. When I opened it, there was a photo of my father on one side and me, as a baby, on the other, scrawled inside the lid, in my mother's handwriting. Not her. Never her. I staggered back, my mind spinning. This wasn't Anna. It couldn't be. Anna was alive. So who the hell was this? I stumbled down the stairs, heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Outside, headlights flickered through the trees. Someone was coming. I hid behind the doorway as a car pulled up. Anna stepped out. She looked pale, terrified. "I got another letter," she called softly. "Claire, are you in there?" I stepped out slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she whispered, "but I had to tell you." "Your mother?" She wrote me again. She handed me the envelope. It was wet from the rain. Inside, just one line. "It wasn't your father's sin to bear." And in a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. Beneath it, another photograph. A baby, 2 babies, twins, one with a bracelet engraved Claire, the other, Grace. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "She said you were her only child," Anna whispered. But what if she lied about that too? The world went white around the edges. Grace, my twin, the child she'd hidden, the one in the wall. I couldn't breathe. All those years of cruelty. All those times she'd said you're too much like him. She hadn't been talking about me. She'd been talking about the sister I never knew existed. The one who'd paid the price for his sins. The one she'd buried to protect the secret. The rain started. Again, Anna said something, but her voice sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I turned toward the house, staring up at the dark attic window. For the first time, I realized my mother's cruelty hadn't been random. It had been grief, twisted, poisonous grief, because every time she looked at me, she didn't see a daughter. She saw the ghost of the one she'd killed, and maybe that was the one truth she'd been trying to make me figure out all along. The next few days passed like a fever dream. The police came. The coroner came. There were photographs, questions, taped off hallways. Every inch of that cabin became evidence. A crime. Seen 30 years late. The bones in the attic belonged to a child, around 1-year-old, female, cause of death undetermined. They couldn't confirm identity yet, but I didn't need them to. I already knew. Grace, my twin, the sister I never knew existed until my mother forced me to uncover her grave. I gave my statement. I told the officers everything. The letters, the journal, the tapes, the photographs. Every twisted breadcrumb my mother had left for me. But the detective's face, a kind, middle-aged woman named Reyes, didn't show judgment, only pity. "I'm sorry, Ms. Harlow," she said quietly, "but your mother's gone. There's no one left to charge. All we can do is try to give that little girl her name back." Her words made me nauseous. I didn't want justice anymore. I wanted peace. But peace doesn't come from digging up ghosts. It comes from burying them properly. I stayed in Pine Hollow for the funeral. The town tried to keep it quiet, but word spread. Everyone remembered my mother, the woman with perfect hair and sharp smiles who sat in the front pew every Sunday. The woman they all thought was good. No one remembered my father except in whispers. They buried the remains beside his grave. The headstone was blank for the ceremony, just Infant Harlow, until the DNA test confirmed it a week later. Then they added a name, Grace Harlow, born and died 1991. I stood alone under a gray sky, my coat soaked through, and for the first time since all of this began, I let myself cry. I cried for Grace, for my father, for my mother too, for the madness that consumed her, for the life she'd ruined trying to rewrite her own pain, and for myself, because I'd spent 33 years trying to understand her cruelty, when all along she'd been trying to punish me for surviving. After the funeral, I drove to the lake outside town. It was where she used to take me as a child, back when she could still pretend to love me. I sat on the same weathered dock, legs dangling above the water, watching the ripples spread out into nothing. The air smelled of rain and pine and ghosts. In my pocket was the last thing I hadn't given to the police, the Polaroid she'd left on the motel floor, the one that said, "You're not done yet." On the back, under the smudged ink, there was faint writing I hadn't noticed before, a single line scratched in pencil. "Now you know why I couldn't love you. It should have broken me, but it didn't. Because for the first time, I understood it wasn't my fault. It had never been. She hadn't been capable of love. Not for me, not for anyone. She'd been hollowed out by guilt long before I was even born." I tore the photo into pieces and let the wind carry them into the lake. That night, I drove back to the house one last time. I didn't go inside. I just stood on the porch, listening to the crickets and the wind moving through the trees. The windows were dark. The air was still. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Not haunted, not evil, just empty. I left the front door key under the mat, got back into my car, and drove away without looking back. For the first time, I didn't feel like something was chasing me. It's been 6 months since then. I moved back to Chicago, sold the house, gave the money to a local shelter for children of abuse survivors. The police closed the case officially as infant homicide, perpetrator deceased. Anna and I talk sometimes. Not often. There's too much shared history to make friendship easy, but enough truth between us to make silence impossible. She's rebuilding too, found her own kind of closure. Sometimes we text late at night, trading old memories that don't hurt anymore. She told me once that she still dreams of my father's car, headlights cutting through the dark, and always wakes before the crash. I told her I dream of the attic, of that small blanket, of the quiet. She said maybe that's our minds letting go, replaying what's left until it loses its power. I hope she's right. Last week, a letter arrived at my office. No return address, just my name in clean, cursive handwriting I didn't recognize at first. For a moment, my stomach dropped, but when I opened it, there was no venom. No confession, just a single line. "You figured it out." No signature. I sat there staring at it for a long time. And then, for reasons I can't explain, I smiled. Because whoever sent it, whether it was someone connected to her, or just the echo of her handwriting in my mind, it didn't matter anymore. I had figured it out. Not just what happened that night. Not just who killed who, but who I was beneath it all. I wasn't her victim. Wasn't his daughter. I wasn't the girl they tried to shape from. Guilt and lies, I was me whole scarred. Yes, but whole. And that's the one thing none of them ever expected. I visit Grace's grave sometimes when I'm back in Pine Hollow. It's small, tucked between two birches. The headstone's smooth now, the grass soft and green. I bring white lilies. Her name means graceful beauty, after all, and sit beside her for a while. I tell her about the city, about my business, about the life I've built, about how I'm finally learning what it means to love without fear. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the trees, it almost sounds like someone whispering back. And when I leave, I always touch the stone and say the same thing. We figured it out, didn't we? Then I walk away, not looking back, not anymore, because the past isn't something I need to escape from. It's something I've outgrown. The end.